This is the day that the Lord has made, and we are going to rejoice and be glad in it. If you don't know who I am the Reverend Mrs. DeJuana, and I am co-pastor of God's House of Salvation, and I greet you with Jesus' joy on this morning, this early morning. Well, God has a message for your soul and to give you guidance. It is coming from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. I'm reading from the easy to read version. Trust the Lord completely and don't depend on your own knowledge. With every step you take, think about what He wants, and He will help you go the right way. And for a title message of this message for today, why would you give up the palace to live in the projects? Why would you give up the palace for the projects? Here we go. This is a key scripture that addresses choosing bad decisions even when good ones are available. Why would you give up the palace to go to the projects? This verse emphasizes the importance of trusting God's guidance and choosing to follow His path rather than relying solely on your own judgment, which could lead to poor choices. In a metaphorical sense, choosing to live in the projects when a palace is available represents a deliberate choice to prioritize community, you're familiar with it, and personal connection over the luxury and the grandeur, even if it means sacrificing comfort and amenities. Essentially, what's going on is that you choose to have a life with more social support and belonging over a life of isolated privilege. So, here's some key points to keep in mind. Community. People might choose to stay in a familiar neighborhood with strong community bonds, even if the housing is less desirable, because they value the sense of belonging and support network. Maybe it's cultural significance. Sometimes staying in a certain area is tied to your cultural identity and your heritage, even if better options exist everywhere or elsewhere. Maybe it's your money. Moving to a palace might not always be financially feasible, even if it's technically an option. Or what about the psychological comfort, the familiarity of a neighborhood, even if it's considered projects, can provide a sense of security to you and stability to you that might be missing in a luxury environment. Well, with this, when you come to the palace, you come to Psalms 91. This is God's promises, His presence, His power, His protection, His deliverance, and His salvation to you who dwell with Him in the secret palace, trusting and loving Him, finding all of His value in God, and staying connected to Him daily, in and out. It is the Old Testament version of Jesus's command to His disciples. You know, when He said in the Gospel according to Mark chapter 8, verse 38, deny yourself and take up His cross and follow Him. But the psalmist David begins with dwelling in the secret place. I call it the palace. Psalms 91. I want you to go back and look at that scripture again. It conveys God's protection to you, God's promises to you, and it is a refuge and strength to you. You trust Him. It encourages you to have confidence in God and to view the world through that lens, even when times are bad. See, at the palace, you get God's protection. God protects His people from danger, including the pestilence, the terror, the darkness, the enemies, and war. At the palace, you get confidence. People should have confidence in God and not let the world determine how you feel. At the palace, you always get God's shelter, that secret place. In His arms, He protects you from the storms of the world. At the palace, you get God's promises to be with you when trouble comes and answers when you call. That is what you get when you come to the triune God's palace instead of the world's projects. In the triune God's palace, His secret place, which is a metaphor for spending intimate time in prayer and reflecting with God, you can expect to experience a deep connection with Him. You can hear His voice more clearly, receive guidance more clearly, and understand about His will for your life much more than you ever had before. You can feel His presence in a tangible way, and you can find peace. You can find comfort. You can find a sense of renewal in His presence. What I mean by that, you get a deeper and more personal relationship with the Lord when you come to His palace. So let's all pray Psalms 91 today. Reach out to God every day. Invest time talking to God, listening to God, and reading your word every day. You're listening to everybody else. Won't you tune that down and listen to the Lord? Remember that God is still in control no matter what happens. And you can trust that God will protect you, but you've got to trust Him, baby. Do you trust the triune God today? So come to the palace right now. Don't wait. Come right now. Jesus is standing at the door, knocking, waiting on you to show up. To God be the glory. Come on into the palace instead of going to that project. Oganafa Oluwa, Amashdi Rabi, Selah, Essay, Essay, Essay. And until next time, by God's graces.